London to Sydney, one of the longest journeys you can make. Nearly 24 hours, 2 flights, a stopover in Singapore, on one of the most iconic routes in aviation. This is Qantas Business Class on the A380 in 2026. And here's everything you need to know.
Welcome to the channel. I'm Anthony, and with over 20 years of business class flying and more than 1 million miles in the air, I've seen just about everything at 35,000 feet.
Kangaroo doors to automatic cross-check.
Here at Doors to Automatic, I bring you in-depth, honest reviews of premium services from airlines around the globe. Love travel, aviation, or just chasing the thrill of the skies? Hit that subscribe button and come along for the ride. Before we get to the airport, it's worth putting some numbers on this trip. I paid £6,479 for a return business class ticket, London to Sydney via Singapore and back. That's a discounted fare booked around 10 weeks before travel. I flew this exact route in February 2024 and paid £7,150. So this trip came in around £670 cheaper. Useful context for anyone planning the same journey. The question this review will answer is simple. In 2026, is Qantas Business Class on the A380 still worth it? The journey began at London Heathrow Terminal 3, Qantas's home at Heathrow, and a terminal I know well. This was a particularly significant departure for me personally. It was my last trip holding a British Airways Gold card, which meant it was one of the last times I could travel with oneworld Emerald status. And on a Qantas flight, that status makes a real difference from the moment you arrive. At check-in, oneworld Emerald passengers have access to the first class desks. Without Emerald status, business class passengers use the standard business class desks. Both options were running smoothly, but the dedicated first class experience was a notably more refined way to start a long journey. The baggage allowance in Qantas Business Class was generous, 40 kilos in total, with no single bag exceeding 32 kilos. I had one checked bag, well within the limit. oneworld Emerald status can increase that allowance to 60 kilos for those who need it. From check-in, a lift took you up to security. Business class passengers had access to fast-track security, and it was quick. The new scanners at Terminal 3 meant liquids and laptops stayed in your bags, which made the whole process noticeably faster than it used to be. From fast track, it was a short walk across the departure hall to the Qantas Lounge at Lounge B. The lounge was shared between first and business class passengers. And this evening it was very busy, with 14 first class and 70 business class passengers on the A380 alone, and likely a number of Qantas frequent flyers with lounge access on top of that. The demand on the space was immediately apparent. Downstairs was a restaurant with a full a la carte menu, and on paper it was genuinely impressive. Buffalo mozzarella with almond romesco, salt and pepper squid with green chili dipping sauce, pan-fried pork cutlet with tomato saffron ratatouille. There's even a QF2 branded gin cocktail on the drinks menu, a Tanqueray served with Fever Tree aromatic tonic, Aperol ice cube and orange. This was not a generic airport lounge offering. I couldn't find a space in the restaurant, so headed upstairs, where there was additional seating alongside a buffet selection. Hot dishes including potatoes, chicken and pasta, plus salads. Perfectly adequate before a long flight, but a step down from the restaurant menu downstairs. I ate quickly at a busy table area before moving to the bar for a glass of Jacquard champagne. The message here was simple. If you're flying Qantas from Heathrow, arrive at the lounge early enough to secure a table in the restaurant downstairs. The experience will be considerably better than the buffet upstairs. The gate was announced at around 7:40 p.m, Gate 42. For anyone unfamiliar with Terminal 3 at Heathrow, Gate 42 is one of the furthest gates from the Qantas Lounge. Allow yourself plenty of time for the walk. Tonight's flight was operated on an Airbus A380-800, registration Victor Hotel Oscar Quebec Bravo, a 17-year-old aircraft that regular viewers of this channel might recognise. It's the same aircraft I flew on this exact route in 2024. 2 years on, it's still flying the Kangaroo route, and as we'll come to shortly, still without Wi-Fi. At the gate, first class passengers were invited to board ahead of Group 1. The Group 1 boarding process itself was a little chaotic. Passengers from multiple groups surged forward together, and the orderly priority boarding that you might expect at this price point didn't quite materialise. It was a contrast I'd find myself thinking about later in the journey, because the boarding experience at the stopover in Singapore was handled much better. The Qantas A380 configuration has 14 seats in first class on the lower deck and 70 business class seats across 2 cabins on the upper deck in a staggered 1-2-1 configuration. Every seat had direct aisle access. There's no climbing over your neighbour to get out. I was in seat 11 Alpha, a window seat in the front row of the first business class cabin on the upper deck. Being in the front row meant there was no seat directly in front, which gave the footwell noticeably more space than the rows behind. The seat itself was 23 inches wide and reclined to form a fully flat bed. The 15.4-inch touchscreen entertainment system was fixed to the wall in front, with a handheld controller to operate it. Below the screen was the footwell, which was the full width of the bed. Within minutes of boarding, a crew member offered to hang up my coat. Champagne or water were then offered. Next to the seat was a counter with storage space, seat controls, a power socket and USB-A port. There was also a small reading light. The armrest folded up to reveal the entertainment controller. There was a storage locker on the window side. Overhead bin space above the window seats was more limited than you might expect, worth knowing if you're travelling with a large carry-on bag. Overhead were individual reading lights and air vents. An amenity kit was waiting by the seat. It contained socks and an eye mask, creams and lip balm from Grown Alchemist, a toothbrush and toothpaste, and earplugs. Pyjamas were also handed out. There was a short supply of large sets and I managed to nab the last pair. Later, another passenger was given large first class pyjamas as a substitute. There was a bit of a delay departing as a passenger who did not have a visa had to be offloaded. The doors finally closed about 20 minutes behind schedule. Then the safety video was played.
Welcome to Qantas. For over 100 years, safety has been our #1 priority.
We pushed back from the gate at Terminal 3 and taxied across the north of the airfield to take off from runway 27 right. The entertainment system included a tail cam. We arrived at the runway at 9:35 p.m. If you're enjoying the review so far, there's another way you can support the channel. Over on Patreon, you can join the Doors to Automatic cabin crew. For the price of an airport coffee each month, members get early access to new reviews, behind the scenes updates, and the chance to help shape future trips and videos. There's a link in the description if you'd like to come on board. The flight time for this first leg to Singapore was scheduled to be 13 hours and 40 minutes. But with favourable conditions, we could expect a faster time of around 12 hours and 7 minutes, more than making up for the late departure. In the air, I checked out the entertainment system. There were 373 movies, 150 TV series, and 333 audio albums. Good quality over-ear headphones were provided. And then there's the Wi-Fi. Or rather, the absence of it. In 2024, I noted that this aircraft had no Wi-Fi. In 2026, on the same plane, nothing had changed. The entire Qantas A380 fleet remains without internet connectivity. On one of the world's longest flights, in 2026, you were completely offline for the duration. That was a deliberate choice by Qantas, and one that sets them apart from virtually every other carrier on long-haul routes. Whether that matters to you depends on how you use the long flight from London to Sydney, but it's something you need to know before you book. About 20 minutes after takeoff, drinks and snacks were served. Orders had been taken prior to departure. The snack should have been a bowl of nuts, but the crew found me some crisps instead. There was quite a lot of turbulence during the early phase of the flight. There were 4 toilets for business class passengers, 2 between the cabins, with a further 2 at the rear of the second cabin. They were a standard aircraft size. Grown Alchemist cream and soap were provided. A changing table folded down from the wall. I changed into the pyjamas I'd been provided with. They were comfortable to wear back in the seat. The meal service started about 1 hour after takeoff. There were 5 choices of main course: a corn soup, a pasta dish, a cod dish, chicken masala or beef fillet. For dessert there were 4 choices: a cheese selection, a cheesecake, ice cream or seasonal fruit. The tray table slid out from under the counter. A side salad, some bread and drinks were served on a tray. Metal cutlery was provided alongside a linen napkin. For main course I chose the beef fillet with garlic potatoes, cavallo nero, roasted almonds and brandy cream sauce. The beef was overcooked and tough, disappointing at this price point. For dessert I chose the cheese plate. Overall, I enjoyed the meal and thought it was well presented. A good wine list accompanied the meal. There was Duval Leroy champagne, alongside 2 white and 2 red Australian wines. The wine selection was well chosen, all selected by the Qantas Neil Perry sommeliers, and recognised with a Gold Award at the 2024 Business Traveller Sellers in the Sky Awards. After the tray was cleared, I was served tea in a cup and saucer. Dinner over, I prepared to sleep. A good quality blanket was provided, alongside a mattress cover for the seat. The seat reclined to flat. The extra space in the bulkhead made it a lot easier to get in and out of the bed. It was pretty comfortable with lots of space at the footwell. With about 5 hours still to go, I checked out the lounge area at the front of the aircraft. There was a seating area and a couple of booths with USB-A power. About 2 hours prior to landing, the breakfast service commenced. There were 3 choices of main course: pancakes with fruit, poached eggs on avocado toast, or scrambled eggs with bacon. The meal arrived on a tray. Metal cutlery and a linen napkin were again provided. I opted for the scrambled eggs with bacon, hash browns and baked beans. It was served alongside a bowl of fruit with some yogurt and a slice of toast with marmalade. The breakfast was very good. My only note was that the toast was a little too dry. Soon the seatbelt signs were illuminated as we prepared to land. We landed on runway 20 right at Changi Airport in Singapore and then taxied to gate D46. We arrived at the gate at 5:08 p.m, 10 minutes after landing. Soon the doors were open and passengers were disembarking for the 2-hour transit window. I headed to the Qantas First Class Lounge, using my BA Gold Card status for one of the last times. The lounge was busy. I immediately joined the virtual queue for a shower. I settled down with a Diet Coke. About 20 minutes later, the pager for my shower went off. The shower rooms were well maintained. I couldn't work out if the skylight was real or fake. Ample products were provided. Disappointingly, the shower itself had very weak pressure. Back in the main lounge, I checked out the menu. A very good selection of snacks and dishes were available. I opted for the prawn wonton with black vinegar and chilli, followed by a coconut and mango sorbet. The food was of excellent quality and the service was very responsive. Soon it was time to head back to the gate for leg 2 on to Sydney. At the gate, there was a separate fast-track line for business and first-class passengers to re-clear security. I got through in about 5 minutes. From the gate, I got my first view of the aircraft. The gate was arranged with a forward section only for business and first-class passengers. Shortly after I arrived, we were invited to board the aircraft. Back on board and back to seat 11 Alpha, which had been cleaned with new bedding provided. Soon after boarding, a glass of champagne or water were offered. In what felt like no time, we were off again. We taxied from the gate to runway 20 centre. Sadly, the tail cam stalled just as we arrived at the runway. In the air, orders were taken for the meal service. There was a choice of 4 main courses, a vegetarian ragu, prawn wonton soup, pan-seared snapper or chicken breast. But first I ordered a Bloody Mary. The food arrived on a tray about an hour after takeoff. Metal cutlery and a linen napkin were provided. A slice of bread and some butter were on the side of the tray. I opted for the pan-seared snapper with black bean and tangerine sauce, jasmine rice and chilli. For dessert I chose the coconut trifle with pineapple and mango. A glass of wine and some water were also provided. The meal was tasty. The snapper had a very good ginger sauce, although the rice was very dry and could have benefited from more sauce. After the meal I settled down for some more sleep. 2 hours prior to landing, another breakfast was served. There was a warm croissant with jam, some fruit with yogurt, tea and juice. I waited a while for the main course to arrive. It was a bacon and egg muffin with tomato and chilli relish. The breakfast was good, although not as substantial as on the first leg. Soon we were preparing to land at Sydney Airport. We came into land on runway 34 left at 5:02 AM. There was a short taxi before we pulled onto the stand. The doors were opened quickly and business class passengers were disembarking. Unlike my last QF2 flight, the doors for the economy section downstairs were not opened until after business class passengers deplaned, giving us a head start on immigration, not that there were any queues. It was about a 10-minute wait for bags, with my case being one of the first to come off the belt. So there we have it, almost 22.5 hours flying from London to Sydney. The service on board was friendly and attentive throughout both legs, genuinely warm, not just functional. The seat was comfortable and worked well as a bed. Having the bulkhead position in row 11 meant more space in the footwell, which made a real difference over such a long flight. I'm not a great sleeper on aircraft at the best of times, but I managed around 6 hours across the 2 legs, which for me is a good result. The food was largely good, with one notable exception. The beef fillet on the first leg was overcooked and tough, disappointing at this price point. If the cod or fish option is on the menu, that may be a safer choice. The snapper on the second leg was excellent, and the breakfast on the first leg was genuinely one of the best I've had in business class. The lounge experience added real value to the journey, particularly in Singapore, where the first class lounge was excellent. Though I should be transparent, access to the first class lounge was through Oneworld Emerald status, not a standard business class entitlement. Standard business class passengers use the Qantas Business Lounge. One small inconsistency worth noting, the upper deck lounge on the Singapore to Sydney leg was significantly less well stocked than on the first leg. Where the first leg had a fridge full of drinks and snacks, the second leg only had water, fruit and Toblerone available at the bar. There was an extensive selection of content on the entertainment system, including a number of complete film series. Plenty to keep you occupied across 22 hours without Wi-Fi. And that brings me to the one area where Qantas continues to fall short, and I don't use the word continues lightly. This was the same aircraft I flew in 2024. 2 years on, it still had no internet connectivity, and neither does any other Qantas A380. On a 22-hour journey in 2026, that's a significant gap. If connectivity matters to you, Singapore Airlines or BA on the same route offer Wi-Fi. That's a genuine choice you need to make before you book. So for just over £6,500, was Qantas Business Class on the A380 worth it? The seat delivered. The service delivered. The food was mostly good. The lounge in Singapore was excellent. And at around 30 pence per mile for a discounted return fare, I'd say yes, it was worth it. Just perhaps order the cod. But what do you think? Have you flown Qantas Business Class between London and Sydney? Let me know in the comments. If you've enjoyed the review, please do give it a thumbs up to help the algorithm surface it to others. And please do subscribe for future reviews.